Hi there, worldlings. I look like I got a perm or something, but I swear I didn't. I just washed my hair last night and slept on it, uh, so it comes out looking like Mike Brady from the later episodes of the Brady Bunch. Last time I talked to you about stream entry, and I said that in Zen there's this idea of Hotsu Bodhi Shin, which is establishing the Bodhi mind, establishing the mind of enlightenment, establishing the will to the truth, sometimes Nishijima Roshi called it. And I said that these might be more or less equivalent sort of ideas. I don't know of any scholarship outside of my own pseudo-scholarship up here that supports this idea. I just see them as both being ideas of what happens when a person first gets, really hot on the idea that they are going to study Buddhism and practice and really go for it. So that's why I think they're the same idea. To me, the idea of stream enterer is a person who has decided for sure they really want to practice Buddhism and they're really going to dedicate their lives to it. And the same with Hotsu Bodhi Shin. Now, Dogen wrote two essays which had that title, Hotsu Bodhi Shin, and they both appear in Book 3 of the Nishijima and Cross edition of Shobogenzo, which is the one with the yellow cover. And I'll leave a link to where you can download a PDF of this if you want to look at it yourself. There's plenty of other versions online. In contemporary versions, one is called Hotsu Mujo Shin, and the other one is called Hotsu Bodhi Shin. But apparently they were both originally called Hotsu Bodhi Shin. And they're both dated as being preached on the same day. The theory is that the first one, which is called Hotsu Mujo Shin, which is will to the, how does he say, will to the supreme? Establishment of the will to the supreme. That's what Nishijima Roshi called it. That one, it was preached for workers who were building a Heiji temple, the temple that Dogen established in Fukui Prefecture, which was then called Echizen. And then the other one was preached for the monks. So the first one was preached for the workers, the second one was preached for the monks. Nobody knows for sure, but there is one scholar who Nishijima Roshi names in his intro, who had that idea, and it kind of seems likely to me too when I read the two side by side. And I just finished reading both of them, and then reading another translation of one of them, and so my mind's all screwed up. This is one of those pieces by Dogen that I feel could do with like a whole seminar or lecture series just about it. And if people want that, maybe we can figure out how to make that happen, either online or in person. I don't know, but it's really good, and it's really dense, and it's also mainly free from the kind of weird literary illusions that Dogen is fond of, where he's citing all these ancient sources that you have no idea what they're about. Whereas if he said, if he made a reference to the Flintstones, everybody would go, oh yeah, I get what that is. But he's making references to some story you never heard of before. There is a bit of that in here, but it's not as full of it as some of his stuff. So let me just read you a couple of bits from it. Hotsu Mujo Shin, this is the one that might have been preached to the workers, has this segment in it. It goes: the National Master Daisho says, fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles are the mind of eternal Buddhas. That is a phrase that Dogen was very fond of. Fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles are the mind of eternal Buddhas, and variations on that. You find that all over Dogen's writings, and it's a nice phrase. We should examine exactly where the present fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles are, and we should ask, what is it that is being realized like this? Realized as fences, walls, tiles, and pebbles. So we should look around at the world and think, what is being taught to us this way? Sort of like if you were in a lucid dream going, well, what does this dream mean? That's Dogen's advice. At least that's my interpretation of it. The mind of eternal Buddhas is not the other side of the king of emptiness. Now that's a little literary illusion, but the king of emptiness is supposedly the king of all things. Oh, Ziggy's going after a squirrel, but he gave up. But that squirrel doesn't have a very tall tree to go up. I hope he doesn't get him. Anyway, Sorry, what was I saying? Oh, the king of emptiness is this Buddha, I think he's a Buddha, who existed before the universe was even formed, before the material universe is even formed. So when I read that, the mind of eternal Buddhas is not the other side of the king of emptiness. I'm reading it as he's saying the mind of eternal Buddhas isn't something far, far away in the long, distant past. It isn't something, some sort of eternal truth that we have to return to, or some great being beyond the beyond, or far away from us. It's right here. That's what he's saying, because the next line bears that out. And listen up. It is being satisfied with gruel and being satisfied with rice. So, of course, those are ordinary food that people in those days ate. So it's like saying it's like being satisfied with burgers and being satisfied with fries, if you wanted to say it in a kind of American vernacular. Or being satisfied with grass and being satisfied with water. Again, ordinary things. To take in such truths and then to sit as Buddha and become Buddha is called establishment of the mind. And to sit as Buddha and become Buddha is sitting Zazen. So when you sit Zazen, immediately, the minute you sit, you become Buddha. That's his idea. Now, another bit here, he says that I've copied off a whole long paragraph, but I'm not going to read you the whole long paragraph. Let me just skip to the middle where it says, thus, our present building of stupas, building of Buddhas, and so on, are just the establishment of the Bodhi mind itself. They are the establishment of the mind which leads directly to realization of Buddha, and we must never abandon them midway. And he kind of goes on and on from that. Apart from this, there is no method which is free of doing or free of becoming. So I like this, and this is one of the lines that I think made people think that this might have been preached to workers who were working on Eiheiji Temple, because they were actually building stupas and actually building Buddhas. I assume they were building this temple. Ziggy's found something else. I don't know what he's really intent on. Whatever it is. Oh, it's that squirrel still. Oh, you're not going to catch that squirrel, Ziggy. And even if you do, it might bite you, which would be a bad idea for both of us. So I hope he doesn't catch that squirrel. They're having this little standoff where the squirrel is trying to get up a tree that's not a really high tree, and Ziggy can't get all the way up the tree, but he can get kind of halfway up the tree, and the squirrel just wants to get out of the tree and go somewhere else. But Ziggy is around there patrolling the area, so I'll work on this after I finish the video. I think they'll be okay for now. Anyway, so he's talking to the workers and saying that their very action is this establishment of the Bodhi mind, is Hotsu Bodaishin. What they're doing right now is Hotsu Bodaishin. They are by their action of building this temple, establishing the Buddha mind, which I think is really nice of him to say. I'm watching this Ziggy and squirrel drama because I hope Ziggy doesn't get bit. Maybe I should go over there and figure out what's going on. Hang on a sec. Now Ziggy's chased the squirrel up a higher tree. But I think the squirrel is safe up that tree because it's really high. Okay, so like I said, what was I saying? He's telling the workers that even their work on building the monastery is real Buddha work. And so you could probably apply that to a lot of things. So he's giving them a little bit of encouragement. And he also says to them, sitting in Zazen and pursuing the truth is establishment of the Bodhi mind. Establishment of the mind is beyond oneness and difference, and sitting in Zazen is beyond oneness and difference. They are beyond repetition and beyond division. So, again, Dogen says this a lot, that sitting Zazen itself is establishing the Bodhi mind, is doing what you need to do. Now here's a bit that I really like, and I think it gets a little complicated and weird and fun, and maybe we'll go into it a bit. In general, there are three kinds of mind. The first, citta, is here called thinking mind. Now he's explaining a Chinese characters that are used to pronounce an Indian word and he's explaining them in Japanese, so it comes out weird in translation. But let's just read it. That's what's going on here. The second Hridaya is called the mind of grasses and trees. The third Hridaya is here called experienced and concentrated mind. Among these, the Bodhi mind is inevitably established relying upon thinking mind. Bodhi is the sound of an Indian word. Here it is called the truth, or the way, Tao. Without this thinking mind, it is impossible to establish the Bodhi mind. That is not to say that this thinking mind is the Bodhi mind itself, but we establish the Bodhi mind with this thinking mind. To establish the Bodhi mind means to vow that and to endeavor that before I myself cross over, I will take across all living beings. So he's really valuing this Bodhisattva vow, the vow that, unlike the earlier versions of Buddhism where the goal was a personal attainment of nirvana, the goal in Mahayana Buddhism, if one can call it a goal, the idea in Mahayana Buddhism is that we're going to try to save everybody else. And this is a tough one. There are times when I think about it and go, I want to save all these people because they're all jerks. But that's what we're trying to do. And then he says this funny thing. This establishment of Bodhi mind is most often able to occur in a human body on the southern continent of Jambudvipa. Rarely it occurs in the 8 troubled worlds, which are the various hells or being born as an animal, but not often. And after establishing the Bodhi mind, we practice for countless kalpas, that's very, very long periods of time, to make living beings cross over before us, finally not becoming a Buddha ourselves, but only taking across living beings and benefiting living beings. This establishment of the mind and this practice experience is quite beyond Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And Shravakas, we mentioned in the previous episode, is what Nishijima defines as intellectual Buddhists. Intellectual Buddhists, that's how he defines it. Hearers, listeners to the word, rather, I think, than practitioners. And Pratyeka Buddhas is a self-enlightened person, and I could do a whole video on this, and I'm thinking maybe I will, but I would think that's somebody like Jiddu Krishnamurti or something like that. That would be a Pratyeka Buddha. But this idea of Jambudvipa, this kind of obsessed me for a while, and I went and consulted this book, Buddhist Cosmology, which I started reading like a year ago, and then I just got a little bit into it and decided to read something else, so I think I'm going to have to start reading it again. But they have a nice little handy-dandy chart, and you can see Jambudvipa is the little triangle, the downward-pointing triangle on the bottom there, and I read all the references to Jambudvipa in this, and then I read a bunch of other things online that I could find, and it's hard to make heads or tails out of this cosmology, but near as I can figure, Jambudvipa is here in this world, but particularly among people who practice meditation, who practice dhyana. So the people in this world who practice dhyana are in Jambudvipa. So it's not that Jambudvipa is thought of by at least Mahayana Buddhists as a specific place, although maybe in earlier forms of Buddhism it was, but it's more like a state of mind or a commitment to practice that exists within this place right here. So you can establish the Bodhi mind here and now as you are, in the way that you are. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that excursion into weirdness. This chapter of Shobo Genzo goes on and on with a lot of really interesting other stuff that maybe I will get to one of these days, which is about the nature of time and the nature of the kshana, which is the supposedly very shortest period of time there can be. He goes on and on about that for a long time in there, and it's quite fascinating. So maybe we'll get to that. I don't know. If you want to send me some money to help me be able to do a video on that, you can send it to this URL you're seeing here. That is my only way of making a living right now, and I really appreciate those of you who support me. But if you're having trouble and can't support me, don't worry about it, because I'm hanging in there and things are okay. So I'll be all right, even if some people don't send me money, but the fact that some of you are sending me money is what keeps me going and what keeps me feeding Ziggy so he doesn't have to eat squirrels. So thank you very much. See you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy. Hey Ziggy. Ziggy. Yeah. I don't know what he's found now. He was after birds and squirrels. Hi, Ziggy. He's still going after animals up there?